Hi, everyone. It's Shane Stevenson from the Buffalo Naval Park. I'm with Steven. We don't get to see you very often anymore.
No, I know. It's popping in, making an appearance.
Yeah, thanks so much. But this is a subject that you have great interest in. Is it true?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Thanks so much. But this is a subject that you have great interest in. Is it true?
it is, yeah.
Uh-oh, what's happening?
Great.
Oh, my word.
This is a subject that you have.
I'm sorry, everyone.
You have YouTube up, buddy?
I actually had YouTube on,
Right.
which is a very big no-no. So my mistake, everyone. Yes, Stephen, you said this is a pretty important subject for you, and I would like to introduce Christopher Warner. So welcome, Chris, all right, to the 2000 Watch. So tell us a little bit about your book, Playing for Keeps.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me. In a nutshell, Playing for Keeps presents the combat experiences of some of the greatest athletes of the greatest generation. And a lot of people have heard of people like, Yogi Berra, Bob Feller, Chuck Bednarik. But what's far less known is that they also took part in some of the biggest battles in history. So I really wanted to shine a light on that. I mean, there's been tons of books written. I mean, Yogi Berra alone, there's probably at least 20 biographies. And in almost all of them, they just kind of gloss over his time in the military, specifically the Navy. But he was at D-Day. And, we can get into that in depth later. But the genesis of the book, though, has actually been kind of percolating, fermenting in my brain for some time. I've always been interested and captivated by stories about iconic athletes, as well as military history, subjects which I've both written about extensively over the years. So combining the two, I think, eventually made sense to put it into a book.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what have you done, or what have you been working on? Maybe how did your passion grow for this subject? And you just said people talk about, one aspect of their life, but not the other. And you're doing this book combines them into, say, one volume. But
Right.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My grandfather's youngest brother, my great uncle, had been a combat glider pilot during World War II. Took part in Operation Varsity, Operation Market Garden. And so that really piqued my interest, and hearing stories about him, and essentially what were suicide missions, flying in behind enemy lines. And so that kind of started, I guess. And, I've been a freelance writer for going on 30 years now. And so it's just, it's always been a fascinating topic for me.
And did we first meet, did Stephen and I first meet you at our annual fundraiser, or had we met?
You and I actually met last year. I was doing a story on the Naval Park for a military magazine that I write for.
Oh, yes. Yes, right. Thank you. But then this genesis of this program, and everyone will be talking about a program that Chris will be doing with us later this week,
Right.
towards the end of the presentation. But the genesis of this came from, hanging out at the annual fundraiser and learning more about Playing for Keeps and the stories that it holds inside.
Yeah, I think these stories will resonate. And again, a lot of people are familiar with some of the names, others have been forgotten, but they're all extraordinary in their own right. And I just think that this is an opportunity to, kind of preserve their legacies, and keeping in line with the Naval Park's mission, right? To honor, educate, inspire. So I hope my end goal is that people walk away and at least maybe having learned about these, not only amazing athletes, but their service to the country at a time when they were needed.
Yeah. You always wonder, or I always wonder, if there was a huge conflict today, like what athletes would join today, or, life was different back then. There's a lot more to give up now in sports.
Right.
So it's interesting, and I hope we never have to find that out, more than we have with the global war on terror. But Stephen, do you have anything you want to add right now before we jump into the presentation and to show some of the photos?
Nothing at the moment. No.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into. Let's see here. All right. Let's move to the side. All right. So here's the cover of Chris's book, Playing for Keeps: Legendary Athletes in Combat During World War II. So everyone, what we're doing is these are photos that Chris sent, kind of like what we do with the Museum Ship Mafia, and then Chris can discuss them. And I think we have 7 athletes today. 7 athletes that
7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8, yeah.
I sent you a bunch of photos, and we'll get to them.
So tell us a little bit. Well, that's a famous. Even I, as a non-baseball fan, know that.
Right. One of the most iconic sports images in American history. And that is Yogi Berra jumping into the arms of Don Larson after the first and only perfect game in a playoff game. So that, again, people have seen that, and there's so many great stories within this story. Berra called the game, and Larson did not shake off one pitch. So clearly Yogi was locked in and knew exactly what he wanted his pitcher to throw.
Wow. Shake off meaning the pitcher's on the mound and he shakes his head. No,
exactly.
I don't want to throw the pitch.
Exactly. So everyone knows that Larson, obviously won the game, but Berra called it though.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
It really just speaks to what an incredible player he was. And I think that he's the greatest catcher who ever lived. I mean, some may try to argue, but if you just look at his accomplishments, 10 World Series rings, 3 league MVP titles, and also the fact that he was such an amazing clutch hitter. And, his granddaughter, Lindsay Berra, who produced and narrated a recent documentary, It Ain't Over, about her grandfather's life. She talks about how his experiences during the war profoundly shaped the rest of his life, and is why he became such an amazing clutch player, because, he didn't see bottom of the ninth with 2 outs as pressure. He saw it as opportunity, especially compared to being shot at by Germans.
Yeah, totally.
All right, at Normandy.
Yeah. So what are we looking at on the right? Is that a bobblehead, I assume?
That is, and that's part of my personal collection. That was a promotion that the Yankees did this year, and it's Yogi in his Navy uniform. Seaman second class, Lawrence Berra.
Lawrence. Oh, thank you. So what are we looking at here?
The ship on the left is the USS Bayfield, which was a large cargo ship that held smaller crafts and vessels, including the rocket ship that Yogi was on, a 36-foot, what they call it, LCSS, Landing Craft Support Small. And their job was to patrol between Utah and Omaha beaches on D-Day, firing rockets, and essentially, being right in the middle of the action. And it's, Ernie Pyle, the famous photographer, war correspondent, wrote how he thought it was a miracle that anyone survived. And in fact, it got so bad at one point, they considered calling off the entire operation. And, and here's Berra, this 19-year-old kid. And I believe during D-Day, he manned a 50 caliber machine gun and getting shot at. So you're talking about planes overhead, strafing the beaches, also vulnerable to friendly fire behind them, as well as Germans firing at the boat.
Yeah, a pretty complex operation. And then the other pictures, obviously the landings for the Canadians, Australians, your English and Americans.
Right.
Yeah, so he was gunfire support, and there's video of those rocket ships just firing off, like from the from the mount there to get the boys on the beach during that amphibious landing. And that's something that really came to its own during World War II, was the growth of amphibious landings. And, it was a strategy used prior, but really the Americans and the British perfected it pretty well.
Yeah, I'd like to add also a little on the backstory. So Yogi, he enlisted in the Navy when he was 18, and he had actually been signed by the Yankees the previous year. So war breaks out, he joins the Navy, and he's kind of restless, right? He goes through basic, and there's a call for volunteers for rocket boat. So Yogi is thinking, all right, that kind of sounds fun. That sounds like kind of a Buck Rogers comic book. Little does he know, right? It's one of the most dangerous missions he could have signed up for, but he wind up surviving, and the rest is history. That's a photo in the middle of the LCSS, which he also served on during Operation Dragoon, which was in August of 44 after D-Day, and he was injured during the battle.
Mm-hmm.
He was hit on his left hand, and he never put in for a Purple Heart because he didn't want his mother to worry.
Mm.
So he carried that scar around him for the rest of his life. His badge of honor.
So did Yogi Berra do his whole service before he became a professional baseball player for the Yankees?
Before he became a Yankee, but I mean, again, he was in the minor league system, right? So
Minor
he played
leagues.
for their farm team for a year in Norfolk, I believe. I'm going to say Class D level before the war. And then, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because there are athletes that we'll talk about that were already professionals, and then they left to go to combat and then came back. Is that true?
Correct. About half of those profiled in the book were already well-known famous athletes before, and some after, while others blossomed later.
Right.
We'll get to Spawn. Spawn, similar to Yogi, Spawn did have a cup of coffee in the major leagues, pitched in about 4 games before he went into the service, but by no means was a star yet.
Gotcha. All right. So what we're going to be doing, everyone, is we're going to be covering about 8 individuals, 8 athletes, as I mentioned. So we're just going to go through the slides, and Chris will fill in the stories of them as athletes and then also their combat. So looking at next, we have Emlen Tunnell, who I've never heard of before, but a pretty fascinating guy in terms of his sports career. And I'm sorry to say that I didn't know about him before.
Emlen Tunnell, offense on defense. Yeah, I love talking about Emlen Tunnell. He was such a pioneer in so many ways. He eventually became the first African-American enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he starred for the New York Giants, set numerous records. In fact, today he still ranks number 2 in all-time career interceptions with 71. And, we're talking 70 years ago now.
Are you saying just in terms of his career, or with wow? So he is like second in the National Football League of interceptions.
Still ranks number 2 in the NFL.
Wow.
And really, he revolutionized the defensive back position. I mean, he was just so athletic. And, his nickname was offense on defense.
Yeah.
And he also returned kicks. He returned punts. But he had been a star college player. And then he had hurt his neck, though. And so as a result, had a hard time enlisting in military service, and eventually he went into the Coast Guard. And like a lot of many African Americans, kind of had to take a subservient role as a steward's mate, and was deployed to the South Pacific, where his ship was hit by a Japanese torpedo. And during the chaos and the fire and the smoke, Tunnell runs to the bridge and he sees this figure completely engulfed in flames. So instinctively, he grabbed the man, tackled him, put out the flames with his bare hands, and saved his life. And again, he just didn't hesitate. Those were just, that's just kind of the person he was. And a few years later, on a different vessel, while docked off the coast of Newfoundland, a sailor had fallen into frigid, icy waters, and Tennell jumped in after him. And mind you, Tennell could barely swim, but he was just going off of instincts and adrenaline. So he goes in, saves his life. And then once he gets out of the service, really, I mean, he's just kind of off to the races. He becomes the first Black player for the New York Giants, becomes a perennial All-Pro, winds up becoming one of the first Black coaches in the NFL. And just I mean, a movie needs to be made about Emlen Tennell's life, because it's just not to be believed.
Yeah.
That's a photo on the left. Incidentally, he played for the Coast Guard for both their football and basketball teams. Extraordinary all-around athlete. And then, of course, that's him on the left, on the right, in his Coast Guard uniform.
These are interesting photos. What's going on here?
So that is the ceremony of Tennell crossing the equator for the first time. And you probably know more about this than I do. He went from a pollywog into the what is it, the world of Neptune, or
as a shellback. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And so, not knowing the history, when you sent this photo to me, I was like, oh, that's the crossing the line ceremony. Because as we were talking about just prior, when else would you be going through a pool of garbage water, right? When you board a ship. And it just has that feel. We have a lot of photos in our collection of the crossing the line ceremonies, which was a brutal ceremony, by the way, if you were a pollywog. But no doubt he was accepted into the realm of the deep, and became a shellback. Yeah.
And throughout his life, though, people always talk about how everyone they called him M, right? Emlen Tennell. He was so beloved, and just, was the kind of guy, who didn't think twice about sacrificing himself, especially, to save a fellow sailor. And he was a beloved teammate. Frank Gifford talks a lot about how they were great friends, and Tennell knew a lot of celebrities, singers, and movie stars. So he was just kind of that person. He had that glow around him. And when he walked into a room, he was always the center of attention.
Very nice. Yeah. And so presumably that's his, that's like an auxiliary supply ship there on the right. That was his.
So yeah, the ship is actually the Edaman, which was the ship that was hit by a Japanese torpedo. And it was primarily a cargo ship, and it was used during the New Guinea campaign. So they had just unloaded, right? And when the attack hit, otherwise it would have been far worse. But yeah, so he was in the South Pacific, and then I believe that the ship was put out of commission. They may have been able to salvage it, and then he redeployed back stateside, and then was doing some patrolling in Canadian waters when the second life-saving incident took place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what do we got here?
So in 2017, to honor him, the Coast Guard commissioned a fast response cutter, the USS Emlen Tennell. Nice. And that is the ship pictured there. And then the other image is I want to say 56 football card when he was with the Giants.
Steven, you have any questions, or does anyone have any questions who's watching online? Please leave questions or comments, and we'll be sure to get them to Chris. Steven, you have?
No, I'm just enamored by all this information. I love hearing about it. I guess I do have. Do you know what kind of? I collect trading cards with my son. So is that do you know what brand that is or anything like that?
It's a Bowman. And
Okay.
the reason I use a lot of Bowman in the book is because they didn't copyright any of their images. So anyone who's ever written a book, you know that copyright laws can be a little tricky. So that was a nice workaround, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
collect too, and a lot of the images that you see in the book are from my own private collection that I've assembled over the years, and so it's something that I've always enjoyed doing. I always will.
You have a copy of that? You have that card?
I do.
Very cool.
Have you heard of that brand, Stephen? What?
Yeah,
Bowman.
Bowman's are very popular.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
It was probably a wider circulated card before Topps really became the major player. Wouldn't you say, Stephen?
It was, but if I'm not mistaken, Topps actually owns Bowman now.
Okay,
So you
Oh,
can
wow.
still buy Bowman cards, but they're produced by Topps.
gotcha.
Interesting.
Okay.
Now, what is up with this dude? This guy. I mean, my God.
All
I've
right.
never heard of this guy, the
So-
human howitzer.
Blotis is someone who's been on my radar for a long time because I actually wrote a story about him about 8 years ago. And then when I was doing the book, I knew that I had to include him again. And of all the stories, he's easily one of the most fascinating, but was also probably the most heartbreaking to write. And he was a star football player and track and field athlete at Georgetown, and was the premier thrower in the nation. Had World War II not intervened and canceled the Olympic Games, he would have been favored to win gold in probably both the shot and the discus. And he was also an outstanding football player and was just wildly popular. He was 6'6", 250 at a time where that was just a gargantuan size.
Yeah.
And he had 3 nicknames. Right? I mean, he was so larger than life. He was the human howitzer. He was from Jersey City, New Jersey, so he was the Jersey City Giant. And then at Georgetown, he was the Hoya Hercules.
Wow.
And I mean, just an amazing specimen. And
Yeah.
there he is with Georgetown in the shot put, and then later played for the Giants.
Wow. 6'6". Yeah, that's pretty big.
But not only 6'6". I mean, I think probably the closest maybe comparison would be someone like maybe J.J. Watt, who not only was big, strong, but also fast.
Gotcha.
And extremely explosive. So he competed a lot at indoor meets at Madison Square Garden and was a huge draw. So, everyone knew Al Blotzes. When awards typically were being handed out as the top male athlete of the year, it was usually, Joe Louis, Ben Hogan, and Al Blotzes.
Interesting. So did he start his pro career before going into the service, or?
He did, and this is why. So he was a really patriotic guy, the son of immigrants. And so after Pearl Harbor, when war broke out, he wanted to enlist, right? Well, there were size limits and constraints. I mean, mainly they didn't have a uniform for him. So they turned him down. Every branch turned him down. So instead of going into the service, he joined the Giants and became an All-Pro, played in 42 and 43. Meanwhile, he continues to lobby top brass. Finally, they relent, and he joins the Army. And while at Fort Benning in Georgia, he sets a grenade toss record
Sure.
of almost 95 yards. So essentially the length of a football field.
Holy moly.
I guarantee that record has never been challenged.
Wow. For a grenade.
And you think about that. A grenade weighs about a pound. Okay. Not exactly aerodynamic. Okay. You're not going to get a tight spiral. But again, he is the premier thrower in America.
Wow.
And so eventually he goes into the Army. He is deployed to the ETO, And 2 weeks after he lands, he's tragically killed in eastern France during the Battle of Colmar Pocket. And I interviewed one of his cousins, who's a retired NYPD detective, and he actually supplied a lot of the photos that you see in the book. And he told me that his mother never wanted to receive his remains because she always held out that someday he would walk through the door, just because he was Al Blotzis. He's larger than life. You can't kill Al Blotzis.
Right.
So, yeah, you know, and he just is such a remarkable story, tragic. But the photo that you see, if you can go back, Shane, the photo you see, I mean, it looks like it's Photoshopped, and that's not a little person that he's standing next to. Right? This isn't like a circus performer. That's a regular sized person. But it just shows, though, how big he was. And, you know, that was, I think, during his time at Fort Benning. The other photo is of him in the training room with the Giants and getting taped up before a game. So that's the Lorraines American Cemetery in northeastern France, which I believe is the largest American cemetery of World War II soldiers. A lot of crosses. And then the telegram is the notice that his family received, telling them that he had been killed in action.
Yeah, do you want to explain that? It's a pretty interesting telegram from what I'm remembering.
Yeah, I mean, at first, there was a lot of conflicting reports, and he was listed as missing, and no information was given. And because of the celebrity nature, and again, this is Al Blotzis, right? He is a major celebrity figure, sports star. So they had to handle that news very carefully. And then eventually, about a month after he's killed, they finally released the information.
So he played, obviously, before he went away to war. And then Tunnell, did he play with the Giants before? So did they play together?
They didn't, because Tunnell was in college before he went into the Coast Guard, and then I believe joined the Giants in 48.
Okay.
Whereas because he wasn't allowed in the military, Blotzis played for the Giants in 42 and 43.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are
he played in one game in 1944, and it was a few weeks before he deployed to the ETO, and the Army made special arrangements because the Giants were playing in the NFL championship game at the Polo Grounds.
Understood.
And so that was his last game.
Wow. Yeah, and of course he's the larger than life, as you said. He's do we know now, someone like him, just learning him about now, do we know the action that he was killed in? You mentioned the battle, but was I could just see him protecting, his company mates or something like that,
Yeah, he was the platoon leader, and as the story goes, and I was able to correspond with the son of a soldier who was in his unit. And according to that firsthand report, Blotzis was hit with a grenade in his back and just sustained a mortal wound. And also this took place during the dead of winter in late January 1945. So incredibly cold temperatures. And so more than likely, he either bled out or froze to death.
Mm. So we're talking with Chris Warner, who wrote a book called
Playing for Keeps.
Thank you. I just flew right out of my head.
You know what,
Shane?
I said I was going to nominate you, all right, for a commendation. You're facing a court-martial right now.
Okay? I get it.
At the very least, walking the plank. So
Understood.
get
Yeah,
it together.
flew right out of my head. and he's also, as we'll talk about at the end of the session today, that he will be presenting at the Buffalo Naval Park this coming Thursday. So 3 days from today in our hangar building. So we'll have more information on that at the end of it. So we've covered a few people, and we're going to keep going here. Now, who is this guy?
All right, Bob Davies. Bob Davies will be known to people in Western New York because he played his entire professional basketball career with the Rochester Royals in the early days of the NBA, the nascent NBA in the late 40s and 50s. He was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He was known as the Harrisburg Houdini. He pioneered a lot of flashy moves, including the behind-the-back dribble, and was a huge college basketball star at Seton Hall before the war. So the photo that you see in his uniform there, I think, was taken, I want to say 43, 44. The image on the right is a advert that I own for Wheaties. All right. So he was one of the first star athletes who endorsed Wheaties. And it's interesting because if you look at the top, it says "Spark Up" with Bob Davies.
Yeah. And he's teaching one of his spinorama
which would
moves.
have a different connotation today. But anyway, yeah, he was really one of the first marquee superstars in the NBA.
Yeah.
And he was a star basketball player in college, and then he enlisted in the Navy and serves on a sub chaser. And again, that might be something more in your wheelhouse, Shane and Stephen. I didn't know much about these types of vessels, but basically kind of a Swiss Army knife, right? Where they did a lot of different things throughout the war, including hunting and destroying U-boats. They also later converted to minesweepers. Mm-hmm. And Davies, that's an image of Operation Dragoon, and he actually wound up becoming a commander towards the end of the war. So yeah, really one of those unsung type of ships that they called them the Splinter Fleet. They were wooden hulled and not very big, but they were indispensable. They did a lot of jobs that had to be done.
Yeah, they're checking, almost like a patrol craft. They're like doing that first search for underwater threats, whether it's a mine or whether it's a sub. Of course, they have some protection, some weaponry on board of some weapon platforms, but then they'd call in the destroyer escorts.
Right.
And for Stephen, Ralph Wilson Jr. was a lieutenant commander on a minesweeper as well.
Yes, he was.
Wooden hulled. So for those magnetic mines that it wouldn't attach to the ship and blow up. So a pretty unique set, a Swiss Army knife, as you had called it. So everyone, you got to forgive me. So Rochester
Royals.
So when the NBA started, there was just really a handful of teams. And as you know, Rochester was a much, much bigger market back then. So they and were incredibly successful. So in fact, to date, they won the only NBA title in franchise history in 1951, beating the Knicks. And in the late 50s, the franchise moved to Cincinnati and then Kansas City, and then eventually Sacramento, and are now known as the Sacramento Kings. But
I knew they were still a team. I just couldn't remember which team that they were. So we have the Buffalo Braves, who are now the LA Clippers. So Buffalo basketball team.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, they definitely left their mark. And yeah, there's Davies in his heyday, number 11. His uniform is actually retired by the franchise, and then there's the newspaper clipping after they won the title in 51.
So does that mean this is a big conversation today in sports? does that record go to Sacramento, or is that record kind of honored in Rochester?
Yeah, I mean, it goes with the franchise, right? Because I mean, a lot of teams, and we'll talk about Spawn in a minute. When he signed, they were the Boston Braves, and then they went to Milwaukee.
Right.
Now they're in Atlanta. So it stays with the franchise. Yeah.
Okay.
But and I think they were the Royals up until they left Kansas City, which was confusing because there was also the Kansas City Royals baseball team.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I did just look it up because I was curious, but it is recognized by the Sacramento Kings as a championship.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I imagine if you go to the Sacramento arena, that's the only World Championship banner they have. Sorry, Sacramento fans, I'm not picking on you. I'm just stating a fact. There he is.
Who's this guy? Yeah.
There's the man. So Bob Feller, the middle picture is him being inducted into the Navy. He was the first professional athlete to enlist after Pearl Harbor. And the person on his right is Gene Tunney, who is a former world heavyweight champion. So Feller really, led the way and led by example. And you have to keep in mind that, Bob Feller was a phenom. He made his major league debut at 17 as a junior in high school. And he immediately started dominating. So it wasn't like, they brought him up and he had a cup of coffee. Within a month, he had already set a major league record of 17 strikeouts in a game. And this is in 1936, arguably the golden age of baseball, with hitters like, Joe DiMaggio and Jimmy Fox, Hank Greenberg. So, dominating men twice his age, all right? And so, he was, I say he had the most star power of any young athlete during Depression era America. And so when he went into military service and specifically chose combat, it's really impossible to overstate the impact that had on morale on both the home front and for those fighting overseas.
I'm sure there was a conversation at home with his family that he could say, listen, I might not want to do this, but because of my stature, it would be good for the country for me to do this.
And, he's making over $100,000, which back then was a fortune. Wow. So let's just suffice to say he took a pretty hefty pay cut when he went into the Navy.
Yeah. These are fun photos.
Yes. I believe those are 40s. So yeah, he was a chief petty officer. So they put him in charge of a gun battery on the USS Alabama battleship. And he initially was deployed to the North Atlantic. I think the Alabama served as a escort for the British Home Fleet. And then they later deployed to the South Pacific. And that's where he was involved in many battles, including the Marianas Turkey Shoot, which is a pretty fascinating chapter in and of itself. During the Battle of the Philippines, and Feller talks about that in his autobiography of getting his licks in, getting some ack during the melee.
Yeah, so he starts his career. He's a phenom at 17. Goes into the Navy, then comes out, and then continues on with his career.
Didn't miss a beat, and that's what's remarkable. You're talking about spending 4 years in his prime in the water, right? And he comes out of it, and, it's like he had never left. He eventually pitches 3 no-hitters, and the stat that Feller that always just nails me to the wall is that, he had 3 no-hitters, but he also had 12 one-hitters, which, again, just shows what type of command he had at the highest level. He led the Indians to the 1948 World Series title. And I mean, you know, the war certainly shortened his career, but again, he was always going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which he was.
Yeah. Where was he from?
Van Meter, Iowa.
The heater
These guys
from
all
Van
have
Meter.
great nicknames, Shane. He was the Van Meter heater.
Oh, okay.
And then Rapid Robert was another one.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In fact, Van Meter's just a little farm town. He was a farm boy growing up. And I think the crew on the Alabama was something like 2,500 men, which would have been 5 times the population of Van Meter.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, the Alabama is probably my favorite battleship, and you can go visit in Mobile, Alabama. If you know, for our fans that are watching right now, they probably know that. But yeah, the South Dakota classes, which was the battleship class in between the North Dakota and the Washington, and then the Iowas, which usually get all of the praise. They were a little bit slower, so they were kind of the workup to the Iowas, and they found that they really couldn't keep up with the fleet very well. They were always a few knots behind. And then, of course, if you go 1,000 miles, now you could be 200 miles behind, even if it's just 2 or 3 knots trying to keep up with the fleet. So they adjusted those battleships. And then that's what brought out, remodifying and constructing the Iowas the way they did to make them a little bit faster and sleeker. But yeah, it's a beautiful battleship that you can. Now, have you visited the Alabama down in Mobile?
Have not, but they were very helpful though when I was doing research and provided some information as well as some photos, I think.
Oh, good.
But
Did you work?
I would love to go down though. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ship. Did you work with someone named Brittany down there?
No.
Remember?
I want to say Todd.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Todd. Yeah.
So what are we looking at in the news photo, in the news clipping here?
Yeah, and this really reflects just how big of a star Bob Feller was. I mean, every move he made was headline news. So when he got married shortly before he went to sea, his wedding photos were splashed across every paper from coast to coast.
Mm-hmm.
Rapid Robert and bride. And there's some story about how she could only make fudge. And he's like, well, after, eating Navy food, don't worry, honey, I'll be able to eat anything.
Nice. So where does he rank in terms of pitchers?
Well, if you ask Bob Feller, he's going to say greatest of all time.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because he had a rivalry with Warren Spahn. Now, Warren Spahn wound up becoming the winningest left-hander in Major League history, and won almost 100 games more than Feller.
Really?
But Feller will tell you that, all right, well, I lost 4 years in the Navy, and I was in the bigs at 17. What were you doing, Warren?
Right. He could have made up that 100 victories, over the course of those 4 years or 5.
Yeah, you can make that argument. Make that argument. Yeah.
Especially back then, right? Pitchers were winning 29 games, if you were good, right?
Well, they pitched more innings, that's for sure. And they typically, pitched a complete game.
Stephen, help me out here. I'm already in the captain's mast, so you got to help me out here because I don't know really what I'm talking about in terms of.
No, you're doing a great. I mean, you knew, knowing that players would do, more complete games back then. That's some baseball knowledge right there because it's almost nowadays. But yeah, I mean, Spahn did spend time in the military as well, so. That there's that story that always took away from him maybe being the winningest pitcher of all time, not just a left-handed pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So that conversation comes up with Spahn, although he denies that. He thinks he would never be the pitcher that he was.
Well, one thing that I'll get into, I believe we're going to do a chapter on Warren Spahn.
Mm-hmm. It might be. Oh, we got it. Okay, let's keep going. Go ahead with your story.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that the thing about Spawn though is that he played until he was 44. Right? He just had just incredible resiliency, which he credits being in the Army for. He just said, just made me stronger, made me tougher. Whereas Feller retired at a much younger age.
Yeah, and we do have some a Feller artifact on display at the museum right now.
Right.
We have his signed baseball bat.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's real nice. So tell us about, well, you know what? I have a bottle of Vitalis in my office. That's an artifact from like 1970. So
Sure.
sometimes I'll throw it on my hair and I like the way it smells, even if it's 50 years old. But what are we looking at on the left there? Obviously some pickup game, but.
This is a photo I found in the National Archives. And you can imagine during the war, they had to be pretty cryptic about location and details that could fall in enemy hands. So the description just says, Bob Feller at an undisclosed location somewhere in the South Pacific, organizing a pickup baseball game. And you can see the palm trees in the background. But
which one is he in this photograph?
He's on the far left.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, holding the baseball. Yeah.
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 Wow. Imagine being like, you're just playing a pickup game and now you have to face Bob Feller like on the mound, man. What an experience. Interesting.
Yeah. You could at least say, hey, I played against Bob Feller.
Yeah, totally. That would be something I would carry around with me. Yeah. Amazing. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is moving on to Tom Harmon. This is an interesting story here. So tell us about the life boy here.
1940 Heisman Trophy winner.
1940.
And while he was still in college, he was on the cover of Life and Time. Wildly popular. His nickname was Old 98. Starred for University of Michigan, and just one of those really one in a generation player. Fast, strong, smart, good looking. I mean, everyone knew Tom Harmon. In fact, he was in a movie about himself starring Tom Harmon. Okay. Before even going to the pros. But at that time, the NFL really wasn't what it is today. College football was much, much bigger, as you can see from, the attendance and the crowds that they used to get. So he didn't really consider playing in the pros. Had always planned on going into broadcasting, which he eventually did. But then Pearl Harbor happened, and he went into the U.S. Army Air Force. I mean, look at this guy, right? I mean, you talk about just a recruiting poster boy.
Yeah.
And so Harmon, the photo on the left is in his bomber jacket. He was initially in Bomber Command, was involved in a horrific plane crash in South America on his way to North Africa. He was the only survivor. And then later in the war, he switched to Fighter Command. And the other photo is behind a P-38.
Oh, Lightning.
And Little Butch was the nickname that he had given to his plane. It was actually a nickname that stood for his girlfriend and then later wife, Elise Knox. But then you can also see the football player and the 98, and he's crushing a swastika in his right hand.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Harmon's story, again, is just one of these, against all odds. And it just really boggles the mind how he survived, because not only did he survive the first plane crash, he survived a second plane crash over Japanese-occupied China and was missing for 30 days. No one knew where he was. They assumed he had been killed. And, he talked later about how it was his football legs that got him through it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And just, the hell he went through in contracting malaria, and losing something like 50 pounds. So Harmon's story, yeah, just remarkable.
So what was his? So he played professional football.
He did after the war, but by
Okay.
then injuries and time
Yeah.
away from the sport had taken its toll. He played for a couple of years for the Rams, but
Okay.
his big heyday though was certainly in college with Michigan.
Did he,
And
after he left football, did he stay in football as a coach or?
he became a broadcaster. He appeared on ABC Wild World of Sports and was a very, very successful broadcaster. He married an actress named Elise Knox.
There we
You
go.
see there. And not surprisingly, they had a bunch of ridiculously good-looking children, one of whom was Mark Harmon, who became a big TV
Bingo.
and film star. And about 15 years ago, I did an episode of NCIS. And so that's Mark in the background. That's me on the left. And
Yeah.
let's just say I didn't live through that episode, but it was a good experience. And when I was writing the book, I reached out to Mark and he helped me with some of the research on his dad. So
Wow,
that was much appreciated.
That's pretty awesome. So, Chris, if you decide to have your body autopsied, at least you know what you'll look like.
Exactly.
You are
Yes.
alive, right?
Yeah, I'm a good-looking stiff. Absolutely.
So for everyone, Chris sent me this photo, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I said, that might be Chris, but why would he be, special affected like that? So that's you in the bed, also in the other photo, or the one highlighting Mark Harmon in the back there.
Yeah, so I played a lieutenant commander who is killed, and the crack staff at NCIS has to determine whether or not it was suicide or murder.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
you have to
Don't
watch
tell
it.
us. I'll have to watch and see that episode there.
Right.
But yeah, I just found that so interesting.
I see that you're obviously not a living person in this scene, but were there any scenes where you were alive or had speaking roles?
Yeah, there were a few like flashback scenes.
Yeah.
And again, I play, how can I say this? So I play a lieutenant commander who was doing things he shouldn't have been doing
Gotcha.
and paid the price.
Right. So was it you were taking your own life because you realized you were doing bad things, or did someone murder you because you're
Hey, spoiler alert!
Right? Don't do any spoiler alerts. I'm just saying, like, that's what you're going through, right? Is like it's
Yes.
either you doing it to yourself.
Yes, but I'll tell you what though, it's nice though, because as I've gotten older, my rank typically gets higher. So fortunately, I played generals, whereas when I first started out working in the entertainment industry, and I may play like a soldier or a rookie cop, but again, the gray hair is working for me these days.
Yeah, nice. Very good. Very good. I expect you now to see you in Greyhound 2 with Tom Hanks.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So what's up with this? I've never heard of this.
Okay. Barney Ross these are all great stories, and that's why I chose them for the book. But the story of Barney Ross is just so fantastical. It reads like fiction, but it all really happened. Barney Ross had been a 3-time world champion boxer, wildly popular, and then he went into the Marines and became a war hero at the Battle of Guadalcanal. But he almost single-handedly killed over 20 Japanese soldiers, saved several of his fellow Marines, and earned the Silver Star, right? Third highest award for valor in the U.S. military. So he goes home, he meets with FDR, he goes to the White House. There's candy bars named after Barney Ross. They're going to make movies about him. But because he had been so shot up and also had contracted malaria, that he became addicted to morphine. And it was an addiction that cost him everything. And it was just this scandal that eventually got out. But true to form, though, of just being, a lifelong warrior, he kicked the habit and became a very outspoken advocate for drug rehabilitation.
Hmm.
And if the name Barney Ross sounds familiar, it's because when Sylvester Stallone was writing the Expendables franchise movies, he named, and if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a badass mercenary who, along with a bunch of other badass mercenaries, saved the world. So he named the lead character Barney Ross because Stallone, being a boxing aficionado, would have known Barney's story. And so it was kind of a tribute, if you will.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's Barney at Guadalcanal on the right. And then the photo with the Springfield, I believe, was at probably San Diego when he was going through boot camp.
Yeah, it's cool. They say in the news clipping there, the first pictures of Barney Ross on Guadalcanal, and there's like a raven or a crow sitting on his shoulder or something. Yeah.
So understand this, though, like Bob Feller, right? Barney Ross was a huge name and celebrity. And after Pearl Harbor, he joins the Marines, and the Marines, oh, great, Barney, why don't you teach the fellas self-defense? And he's like, hell no, it's combat or nothing.
Oh, interesting.
So they're like, okay. And he goes out to the South Pacific and becomes this war hero, right? And so, as you can imagine, every move he made was headline news and splashed across papers all over the country, all over the world. Everyone wanted to know, the story about Barney Ross. And so if even half the stuff that happened to Barney Ross, were true, but it would still be an amazing story. But I really enjoyed the research for it because I learned so much about.
So did he stay the whole time of World War II, or was he sent back because of injuries?
So he suffered really horribly from the effects of malaria, and it relapsed time and time again. He was also shot and wounded, and he should have been killed. They were surrounded. It was a siege. But he was just the kind of guy you just couldn't kill.
Stubborn man.
So it's fitting that
he survived the war.
Be
then
named after this character in the Expendables because same thing. How many of those have they made? I haven't seen them, but
there's I think at least three or four.
Right?
Yeah. So he survived the war.
He did, and he came back, and then that's when eventually, the story got out that he had become this full-blown junkie and addicted to morphine.
Did he ever box again after the war or no?
No. He had pretty much just become this ambassador, if you will, and then later a drug rehabilitation advocate.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing these stories again. I've learned a lot here tonight.
Great.
And again, we're talking to Christopher Warner, who wrote the book Playing for Keeps, which you can find. We're not there yet, but you can find it on Amazon. And we have, I think, one more athlete to go. Local boy made good here, I think, Warren Spahn.
There you go. From South Park High School in South Buffalo. And that is him in the middle, I believe, during his senior year. And then on the right, probably would have been his first year with the then Boston Braves before they relocated to Milwaukee. And
what is with that baseball stance? What is with that pitching stance there?
He was known for a high leg kick, and that's a lot of pitchers use that just as leverage. And it was just the style at the time.
Wow, amazing. And Stephen, we have some of his artifacts on the second floor. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a yearbook as well. We do have a jersey from South Park High School from the year that one of the years that he was on the team. The high school says that it is his.
Okay.
I don't have like the actual. For all intents and purposes, it is, but
Okay.
I always have the caveat that like the school says that it is. I have no other proof otherwise.
Right.
But you know that it is from that year, one of the years that he played. So I do take them at their word. But I like to throw that caveat out there because as a someone that works at a museum, you have to make sure you're not. There's a small chance that it might not be his. But
Yeah. Interesting.
From what we've been told, yes, that it's his jersey and a hat signed by him. I don't know if it was a game worn hat or anything, but we do have a Milwaukee Braves hat signed by him.
Right.
It also for the Giants and the Mets, if I'm not mistaken.
Very good, Stephen.
At the end
did
of
your
his
homework.
career. Yeah. Well, I'm a Mets fan, so I'll take him and Willie Mays as Mets, even though
Fun fact. So at the tail end of his career, at the tail end of their careers, Yogi Berra and Warren Spahn played for the Mets.
And I think Yogi coached the Mets too, right? Did
he was kind of a player coach at the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Was the Mets become a team in 62?
Yes.
62.
Okay. So the the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers leave. Now New York has only one team, and they're like, "Oh no,
you were right. The Giants were a New York team as well. They were
that New York Giants. Yes, of course, yes.
That's what you'll see if you look at that card that was shown earlier. It said New York Football Giants because at the same time there were two New York Giants teams.
Correct.
But yeah, they both left, and then a few years later, the Mets became a team.
Right. Right.
Well, these are interesting photos. What do we got going on here?
So yeah, the photo on the right is Spahn, I believe, at Camp Gruber in Oklahoma before he deployed to the ETO with the 276th Engineer Combat Battalion. He would later see action at the Battle of the Bulge, Hurricane Forest, Battle of Remagen. He earned a Purple Heart. He was wounded at Remagen. Also earned a battlefield commission. And then I believe got out of the service in 46 and kind of like Feller, just really, hit the ground running, never looked back, became a dominant pitcher. The other photo is one of my favorite in the book, and it's Spahn with actors Vic Morrow and Rick James on the set of Combat. And it was a hit TV show on ABC in the 60s. So when Spahn was with the Braves and they played the Dodgers, he visited the set, right? And so you have this real combat vet, showing these actors, right, how to throw a ball or how to throw a grenade. And so they said, God, how'd you like to be on the show? So the next time that the Braves came to LA, they got him a cameo appearance playing a German soldier on the show.
Yeah.
And so production was running late, and it was a day where Spahn was actually pitching that night. So production's running late, Spahn's got to leave, and finally he just takes off, still wearing his German uniform, is hightailing it through LA traffic, right, to make it to the game on time. And make a long story short, wins the game, gets an RBI. I think he has a double. And of course, goes all 9 innings with the complete game win.
Amazing.
Not in a German uniform, though. He changed. So
I was going to say
that would have been a hell of a story. But
yes, it would have been. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you were mentioning some of his combat tours.
Yeah, that would have been an image from the Battle of the Bulge. You can see the snow where they were dealing with just Siberian type temperatures, miserable. And Spahn talked about how, when you go through what I went through, sleeping in frozen tank tracks, baseball will never be hard work. And the other photo is the damaged bridge at Remagen, and he was actually wounded by shrapnel with the collapse of the bridge and earned a Purple Heart.
Mm.
Which
Yeah,
his Purple Heart is on display at Truist Park. If anyone's ever down in Atlanta, you could see his Purple Heart in person.
Yeah.
Because now the Boston Braves become Milwaukee Braves, become Atlanta Braves.
Correct.
And he played for, he didn't play for Atlanta though, right?
No, he left Milwaukee, I think in 64, went to the Mets, and then played 1 year with San Francisco. And then at like age 44, finally hung up his cleats for good.
So how many games did he win? Do you guys know?
363.
367. Oh, we're so close. I said 367, but 363.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And that's the most for a lefty?
For a left-hander, correct.
Yep.
Do we know, Steven, if he ever came back to Buffalo at all? I don't think he settled back here.
No,
but...
he settled down in Oklahoma. His son still he had a ranch there, and his son, if I could be mistaken, but I think his son still runs Broken Arrow Ranch, I believe it's called.
That's correct. When he was at Camp Gruber, he met a gal that he married, and then afterwards and during his playing career, he bought a ranch, and then that's where he retired to.
Away from as many people as possible, right? Just now you can live the relaxed life. Just
maybe a little warmer in Oklahoma than Buffalo.
Oh,
when
man.
I was doing some of the research for the exhibit that we did, I found audio of his son giving an interview about his father. And I guess he didn't do it very often, but he was like very proud of his father and everything. There's not much in Buffalo by the way of like honoring Spahn. I think there's through Delaware Park. I think there's Warren Spahn Way. If I'm not somewhere around there, but otherwise there's not much about Warren Spahn. And even like us as a naval park, we really hadn't covered him.
Yeah. I think in West Seneca, maybe.
Yeah, there's a street, I think.
Where
Casanova Park, maybe?
I think in East Aurora.
That's what it is. Yeah.
You're right. East Aurora, there's the Warren Spahn Way.
Yeah. I mean, South Park produced a lot of war veterans that survived and were killed. So I'm sure he's got to be honored at South Park,
probably
even for his baseball.
So they do have his number up in the gymnasium, and the gymnasium might even be named like Warren Spahn Gymnasium or something like that. So they did have his jersey hanging up in like a display right outside of the high school gym. There's a couple other things of his. There was like a baseball card in there. There's a couple other of his items that the school has. He was the big ticket, so I was glad that we were able to secure that on loan. What do we
got going on here? Hold on. Let's see if we
It's one of my cards. I don't know if it's coming through.
Yeah.
Spahn, shows no hit.
And he threw his second no-hitter at age 41. So I want to add that.
That's pretty amazing.
Let's hear it for the old guys.
Yeah. It's like the Ron Jaworski Field. Ron Jaworski, the football quarterback, was from Lackawanna, and they had a field named after him, and now it's not named after him. So I don't know what happened there. But for a long time, there's Ron Jaworski Field, I think, where maybe the Lackawanna High School played, something like that. So want to mention Chris Warner is speaking at the Buffalo Naval Park this coming Thursday. From 6 to 7:30, there'll be a presentation. And Chris, we just covered potentially half of the people that you cover in the book. Do you want to just mention some of the other individuals, the other athletes that you mentioned?
Yeah, and really the main criteria for the book was that they were all athletes at the top of their sport, whether it be baseball, football, basketball, track and field, swimming. I've got a bobsled Olympic champion named Billy Fisk, who has a remarkable story. So it's really a little bit of everything. And I really enjoyed writing it and researching it, and hopefully, people will enjoy the book.
Yeah, that's awesome. Stephen, do you have any final thoughts? You'll probably enjoy digging yourself into this book, right? I mean,
yes. And I'm very excited for Thursday. I'll be there too with Chris. So, if you guys are in town and not doing anything, please stop by and, come join us at 6:00.
Yeah. Are there any wrap up questions for Chris from the audience?
Do you see yourself writing a sequel, Chris?
People keep asking me that, and I think there's plenty of material. I could also possibly add the Korean War, because something that comes up, and I think you've even mentioned, Stephen, where's Ted Williams? Well, Williams was such a good pilot that they kept him stateside during World War II as an instructor, right, to teach other pilots. But then he wound up going to Korea, fighting the Korean War, saw 39 combat missions. So I could definitely add more from World War II, as well as, possibly Korea and Vietnam.
Yeah. Wow.
And stay with the same theme.
Then
I'd imagine too, like, I know we see like, the big four sports right now in the United States, but even going into maybe, Desert Storm or something like that, athletes that are on the top of their game that may not be in a sport that's as popular now. So they're probably, imagine there are some, even up to the global war on terror, that athletes would have gone overseas and fought, like if they were like a swimmer or something like that. I'm sure, we talk about baseball and football and basketball being, like today it's almost hands off, right? Like you would never see an athlete do that. But I mean, I'd be curious to see what other athletes and sports were even up until like the 21st century going over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like those famous swimmers, right? Like the guy swimmers. It would be like them joining for the global war on terror. I can't remember their names, but all those guys from America that won all those gold medals, famous swimmers on Wheatie boxes, and then here they are joining the Army or Navy, or they might join the Navy if they were swimmers, right? But yeah, Pat Tillman. We have Bob Kalsu, who was at the Naval Park from Vietnam. So everyone, this coming Thursday, 6 to 7:30 in our hangar building, the red building across from the museum. Come on by, meet Chris, get a book, have it signed, and then you can also find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Playing for Keeps.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so very welcome. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris.
We're gonna kick you off now, and then I'm gonna talk to Stephen for a bit. Thanks so much, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Hey, Stephen, what's up?
We're still live.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yes. I thought we were just chit-chatting.
Well, we are, but, just for everyone's benefit, because you're not on anymore. So tell me what's going on. What's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, right now is our encampment season, which I've talked about before on 2000 Watch. We're really like in the middle of it. It's been a little difficult this year. So we're really trying new marketing approaches, and there's a number of different factors that are out of our hands, but it's still something that we have to double down on and make sure that we're accomplishing what we need to do. So I've been really, really busy with doing encampments and looking forward to our off season.
And what are you gonna retool the encampments in some way in the off season, or
I don't know. Me in my brain. Maybe this is something you can help me out with too, because I'd love some information. I was thinking about rebranding it almost as like Adventures of the Sixth Fleet or something, or like Sixth Fleet Overnight or so. For making it its own brand almost, which I think would be kind of cool. Right now it's called Overnight Youth Encampment, which is it's a great experience, but I want like almost for people to just be like, oh, what's that? And then it brings in like the idea the Sullivans were in the Sixth Fleet, the Little Rock was on the Sixth Fleet, and I think it would be, I think it would be a great gateway to market it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fabulous idea, and maybe now I know it'd be expensive, but like everyone has to bring their own sea bag or something, and they come on board and they have to show ID, and they're being treated more like sailors, right, or something like that.
Right, and that's kind of the idea that I'd like to see us, is that real full immersive. And I think over the past, during COVID, we had shut down for quite a bit with the encampments. I think actually April of 22 was when we were supposed to come back. And then we had to postpone with everything with the Sullivan. So I think it was May of 22 finally that we had reopened after COVID. And I really, at that point, I had taken over the encampment and wanted to make it more than just like, oh, I'm coming on board, I'm eating some food, I'm watching a movie about the military. Like, I wanted them to leave with something, right? I want to leave with like something knowledgeable or whatever. So we've done the different topics of underwater archaeology, which was, when Blair came and had done all of her stuff and really got me into that. And I think that a lot of people enjoyed like seeing like shipwrecks and different information on that. We did talkers for a season, which was fun. We did a Space Force one for a while. Just so, kids love astronomy and stars and stuff like that. And I thought it was a good way to get kids interested in the military, which was great because before that, I had no idea. I had no knowledge of Space Force. And I learned a lot about it and, how it started back in the 60s and then in the 80s became part of the Air Force. And then, so it's been around for a long time and they do a lot of important work. And, I never knew, like, there's no astronauts in Space Force. Like, they're here on Earth patrolling, they're like the space police or whatever. But they do GPS, satellites, everything that you could think of. And then this year we're doing, I call it Anchors of America. And it's about the Revolutionary War and up to the War of 1812. And basically the birth of the Navy, the years in between where there was no Navy, and the Barbary Pirates having, Jefferson wanted the Navy to come back and all that. So we get to dive into that. And again, like,
and you're saying for like 2026.
Well, we started it this year, so we are already doing Anchors of America.
Oh, okay.
And as we all know, it's Navy 250 now and America 250 next year. And I really want to make the educational programming on that. And I think that throughout the year, in any like field trips or encampments or anything, we can progress along the timeline of different dates and different things that happen. Like, I know it's going to be 251 years, but I'd love to do something on like April 19th for Paul Revere, and that story. I just think the stories of America 250. So that's where this kind of came from, is that I'm trying to do like America 250 stories of America that stick out and kind of, champion our history, if you will.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, everyone. Stephen and I are colleagues, but this is all stuff I'm hearing for the first time. So thank you. You're hearing it for the first time, as am I. So
these are things that are in my brain that I have to like actually put down on paper.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I did make a little PowerPoint for the Anchors of America. So for the year. But yeah, outside of that, it's how it is down there.
Yeah.
So we're busy. So
we're getting ready for we're winding the season down a little bit, but we're gonna try and talk about things over the winter time. So I know Stephen and I are going to be in a lot of meetings about are we going to try to stay open a few days this year? What is that going to look like? All that stuff. So you'll be catching up on all the updates as we can bring them to you, either through social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and any other final thoughts from anyone? Thanks so much for being here tonight, guys. I know this is we haven't done a 2000 watch in a while, but happy to bring it to you tonight. And Chris Warner, can't thank him enough again. I'm sorry I went to the captain's mast. Apparently, you may have gotten a little upset with me. Sorry, Chris. But any other comments from anyone? If not, we'll sign off, and you can leave a comment down below. Of course, as you always can on a YouTube video. All right, Stephen, I guess we'll see you tomorrow, I guess, at work.
All right, man.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being here. What was that, Stephen?
No, I just was saying thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And we'll see you again soon.